Hello, everyone. I'm hoping my voice is not crackly, but if it is, yeah, technology sucks. Welcome to Two Wizards and a Mic, where a couple of old dudes talk about the internet. Talk about the internet? No, we're talking about D&D. Sometimes the internet, but mainly Dungeons and Dragons. But today we're talking about a Kickstarter that is, of course, underway as we speak. With how many days, Andrew?
Shane, about 2.5, about 2.5 days. So
Excellent.
tonight, so tomorrow night at 6 p.m., it'll be exactly 2 days to go. Yeah. Oh, so it's almost three. Yeah. Yeah, it's still closer to 3 days. Yeah. It's weird how they count it down because as soon as it's like 2 days and 59 minutes and 59 seconds, it says 2 days.
What?
It counts down by the second as it goes down. So 1 second after 3 days, it will say 2 days, even though it's basically 3 days, right? So it's just the way that the countdown works. So there's basically 3 days left, and you can see there were 95% funded.
Which is very cool. And you always tell me that there's like a sudden rush sort of in the last 24 hours, too.
Yeah, there's usually a good run at the end, partially because people can follow Kickstarters, and what that means is they'll click a button saying they're interested, and if they don't want to pledge right away, they can follow. And then with 48 hours to go, Kickstarter emails them and says, "Hey, this project is almost done." And also, I didn't realize this until today. They also email you with 8 hours left. I don't know why
Oh,
I didn't know that or didn't notice it, but so there's two alerts that come in, and we have over 200 people signed up for that. We have more people signed up for that than who've pledged for the Kickstarter. So yeah, we're hoping a whole bunch of those people will join us on the last 2 days.
hey, look. I I did notice that you had an image here saying no to AI generated images.
Mhm.
That's hilarious. And I still don't know what the stretch goals are.
Well, we'll know very soon if we get to the funding point, which is only about 450 Canadian, which is 1095 US. Just kidding. Yeah, about 300 US or so. If we get there very soon, we'll unlock the first one. And we won't unlock it. We'll show you what it is, and then if we reach that one, which is not too far over the goal, we'll unlock another one, and so on. And we'll unlock that, and we'll show you what the next one could be. So we have at least five ideas, and hopefully we can get to those. That's why it's better if people pledge now rather than waiting for this last second alert. You'll get a better project if you pledge now, and also there's more momentum, which we'd always knew it would be a challenge with U.S. Thanksgiving and Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but we thought it'd be better to do it now than later in December when people's minds are on the holidays and other things,
Oh, exactly, because they are going
other
to
holidays.
have Well, I mean that's the thing, is that this time of year there's so many things you have to compete with. I
Mhm.
mean, you're never going to win. It's just you're just going to have to, coexist.
Well, and we would like to do a few of these books every year, and if we're going to do that, we're going to have Kickstarters, probably 3 or 4 times a year. It's only our second this year, actually, but next year we'd like to do 3 or 4 adventure books.
Nice. Time is running out. Oh, I love this image. Oh, I love it. Oh, that is so cool. So, is there anything you wanted to tell the folks for this particular week, being that it is drama free from D&D land?
Oh
He
yeah.
says he says knowingly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, for sure, people, if they're interested in this new adventure, it's a 72-page book. It's our second big adventure. We did one, we kickstarted one in the spring called The Rise of the Mushroom King. And this adventure can be the sequel or standalone or a standalone adventure. That first one, people have the PDF, and the proof of the first printed book is on its way to the office. Probably be here next week, actually.
Nice.
And so this is the second adventure book, and it tells a story about a city that's been attacked by an army from the underworld, a mushroom army, led by the Mushroom Queen this time. And this army has attacked the city. People are fleeing for their lives. Most of the buildings are destroyed. So it's sort of this post-apocalyptic medieval version of that wasteland. And the players are tasked with basically infiltrating the city, reaching the queen who rules the city, the human queen, rescuing her, defeating the leadership of the army. And potentially one option is to then escape out of the city. Another one, which will give in the adventure, is that you continue to stay and fight and defeat the entire army, because you're not alone. We like to have a balance in our stories and in our world of Mir, of where it's not just bleak and, it's not just a dreary place with vampires and evil creatures in charge all the time. There's definitely a certain amount of that, but there are actually also good people still. And so with this attack on the city, you do have some help. And if one option, if you want to continue the adventure, is to include that into the story, which we give you that option. The basic adventure is really a small group stealthing in, rescuing the queen and getting out. But you can expand that as well.
So, is there going to be a trilogy?
No, this is peak.
No.
No, this is the. We could do one later on that goes further into the underworld. You go a bit. There's a chance again, like the first adventure, to adventure partway into the underworld, and that we could continue with later on and go much deeper. And that could happen. We could do an adventure like that next year, but it won't be directly tied. It could have some connections, but it won't be directly tied to these adventures. So, no, these two are going to wrap up a story about a planned attack by this underworld army. And Rise of the
Right.
Mushroom King is the first part of that. This is the second part, although you don't have to play both of them. The next one we're going to do, I hope to kickstart in February, or probably February. It's going to be quite different. There's going to be an undead theme, very different location. This one, Rivenhelm, the Fall of Rivenhelm, this current one is a city by a river in the middle of the continent. And you have to face mutants who've been infected by these spores from the mushroom army. You have to deal with bandits and people taking advantage of the situation and stealing things. And many hazards like fires and sinkholes and floods. And also I've included more as I finish writing up the adventure. It's about, I'd say, 70% done. What I've done more is add more in about the people who are resisting. Of course, most people will flee for their lives because they're not warriors.
Right.
But some of the city guard and some of the people from the city are actually standing up against these invaders from the underworld. So I've included options for that of the players, the party can get involved in that and become part of that resistance and help those people. And a bit more about how they can help the people who are fleeing for their lives, the refugees from this attack. And something new I've added is, the underworld has opened up. When the city got attacked, the city sunk partly into the ground, which is why most of the destruction happened. And a hole was opened up where the army could now attack from the underworld. But I've decided not only are there underworld creatures coming out onto the surface, but the underworld itself is coming onto the surface. So huge, strange vines and fungi and other kinds of flora are growing out of the underworld, like through cracks that have been created in the city. And the darkness itself from the underworld is coming and spreading out of the underworld into the city as well.
Okay, that's cool. Actually, I had this thought the other day. The focus of these adventures, the last one and this one, are on the continent of Zog, correct?
Yes.
What is the next adventure? Is it also the one you're just talking about? That's also on Zog. I assumed it was.
The Rivenhelm?
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
Sorry, the way you like any future ones post this one.
Oh, okay. Well, the first one, Rise of the Mushroom King, that one is based in the city of Rogan's Gate, but you can put it in any fantasy city you want. In our world, it's in the world of Mir on the biggest continent in the biggest city. Very close to Rogan's Gate, there's another huge city. Both of them actually are city-states. They're not part of a kingdom. They're so powerful. So Rivenhelm is actually, that's the name of the city-state near Rogan's Gate. That's the second adventure. The third one we're planning for early next year, that one is back on the continent of Mir, where we started our adventuring with your party. And it's actually the continent where the humans went, excuse me, after they were on Zog. So humans came into existence on Zog, and the first major migration to another continent was to Mir, which is in the more of the center of the world, and it's much smaller. That's where this new adventure takes place. And it has to do with also the reason why the waves of settlers stopped coming from Zog to Mir. And that's a big part of what this next story is about. What prevented that? And it takes place in a much less dense part of the world. These first two are in huge cities. This new adventure is going to be more in the wilderness, and each one I want them to be quite different than the last one. So the first one is, there's a lot of mystery involved in the first one, and it's a city, a dungeon, and then underworld adventure. The second one is really it's a rescue mission, and this wasteland, this massive city, and it's a journey to get somewhere. The new one in early next year is going to be, again, a bit of a mystery. The smart way that the adventurers could play it at first is actually that they're fleeing, but they don't have to.
Okay.
So that is interesting because we've never done anything like that. Like initially, they're probably going to want to flee from what's happening, especially because they're usually first level. But again, you can play these at different levels. And then the one after that is going to be back on Zog, and it's going to take place in a tiny little village. And that one is going to be, it's going to be near the woods, and they're each one I want them to have quite different content and also have a very different sort of mission or flow of how the story goes.
I was going to say that I'm waiting for, what is the continent in the south, at the very south part? It's long. It's not. Oh.
You probably mean the desert if you mean a really long one.
Yeah, the desert one. Yeah, I think it's the desert one I'm thinking of. Yeah. I'm waiting for an adventure there. But it's very sparsely populated, if I remember correctly.
It is. It is. There are some very interesting stories there, though, and there haven't been that many D&D desert adventures. You know, there was the world in late 80s, early 90s. There was a whole setting based there. And then there were a couple I can think of in early D&D, a couple of adventures set in the desert, but it's not a common D&D kind of location. But we have some interesting stories there. So and what we'll probably do, we've done the last several Kickstarters, is we poll people to have some idea of, where they want us to go. It doesn't mean we're going to go there
Yeah.
exactly that direction, but it's nice to know what people are interested in. And we have made some changes because of those polls. So we'll likely poll people as part of this new Kickstarter when we put out the backer kit and say, what kind of settings would you really like? It has been interesting. I think if I remember correctly, we did do one poll about this already. And the first one, people they wanted underworld adventures, they wanted dungeon, and they wanted cities, which is one of the reasons we've started like this.
Right.
And then way at the bottom, I think, were forests, which I was surprised at because our most popular book is Monsters of Feyland. And those are mostly creatures that are from the woods, although they don't have to be.
Right.
So it was interesting to look at that. Yeah, I definitely remember that city, dungeon, and underworld were at the very top. And when we looked at creatures, undead are very, very popular, extremely popular. And humanoids, which I was surprised. People still really like the evil humanoids in the adventures, like orcs and lizardmen and hobgoblins and bugbears and goblins. Those, those sort of creatures, they're still popular.
Yeah, I was going to say that the even though, like, for example, a TV program that I'm sure you've heard of called The Walking Dead has been popular for a long time. It ended its run not too long ago, but it's also spawned a bunch of other shows. I've forgotten, there was one that takes place in California, but then there was a bunch of other sort of spin-offs. And it's some people thought that there would be undead like they were tired of it, they were finished, that was enough. But it's still going. Those shows still go because the audience still want the stories. And actually that's the other part too, is the thing I like about the adventures that we play is it might be overwhelming at times when you have like an army of the undead that's trying to do something, or somebody's in control of them. But that's kind of the cool thing, is that you have to deal with this sort of stuff as a character. That yes, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to feel as though, like, when is this sea of zombies going to go away?
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the point. Like, in my real life, last time I checked, I wasn't fighting against the undead anytime recently. So playing it in a game is, kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, we want more. Andrew, I need more spores. I need more undead. And I specifically want to see an adventure at sea in the world of Mir
Oh,
at
wow.
some point. Because you always say the oceans are deadly, and I'm like, prove
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, well, you're going to be in luck then. That's definitely in the cards. And yeah, I do say that. I mean, that's one way that we wanted to have the world set up so that all 9 continents could have different worlds in them, because they've existed really independently, because the oceans are so dangerous and it's so difficult to travel and it's so far. There's
Yeah.
sea monsters and dragon turtles and all kinds of creatures in there. So yeah, we definitely will touch on that. And as I said, the undead is going to be the main theme of the new adventure. And yeah, I think it's fun when you do those really epic scale stories. Like, that's what definitely this new one, Rivenhelm, is like when you know that there's a whole army is attacking. However, there's a way to structure the adventure still that it's realistic, and we want to have these stories open for low, mid, and high. So the low level adventure, you've got to figure out a way that you're not going to wipe, you're not going to have a TPK every 20 minutes.
Yes.
So there's way, I mean, really the basic way to do it in this story for the DM is that you're literally going street by street, building by building through the city. Um, there's lots of different ways that the characters can do that, because the mission is to get to the castle, and you arrive on the river. Not long after that, the castle will be visible once you get past sort of the first district by the river. And then you
Right.
can see the castle, and however you get there, that's your mission. And then in the way are all these different buildings and hazards and encounters. And it's the good thing about for the characters is that the underworld army is not as organized as your kind of typical army, right? So they don't exactly march in formation and have, they're not as coordinated, and in terms of the troops on the ground, basically the shrooms on the ground. um, so that helps the characters, and you're really fighting street by street, building by building, and you don't have to, you don't have to be in combat the whole time. You could try and stealth
Right.
through the whole city if you wanted, but there's lots of interesting things on the way. Like I said, there's people who are trying to survive, there's people fleeing, there's bandits robbing buildings that have been abandoned, there's strange characters who just live in the city, and now they've kind of been exposed because for example, this one wizard lives in a tower that's built right in the city. Usually a wizard's tower is something out of the city in the wilderness. This wizard's
Right.
tower is like right in the neighborhood, and it's now leaning like the Tower of Pisa because of the city sinking, and it's leaning drastically to the side. But the guy who lives there is still in there doing his work. And so he's sort of like that guy, that homeowner who refuses to sell so that the condo building can be bought, like can be built, like here in Vancouver. Um,
And they build around it.
yeah. So there's a lot of weird characters, and there's, if you want to, when we did a poll, we actually did a poll on Discord and said, what parts of the story really sound interesting to you? And most people actually said helping the fleeing citizens and fighting with the resistance were their favorite parts of it.
Really?
Yeah. So that wasn't
That's
a
cool.
that yeah, that was a few people on Discord, not a large sample. Um, so we made sure that that's part of the story. And as I said, a lot of it is done. I still have to finish off the new creatures. There's going to be at least 10 new NPCs and monsters. And then I have to finish off a few. There's new magic items and spells. Part of that is done. And the last part has to do with the characters reaching the castle where the queen is, the human queen who rules the city. So those are the parts still I'm finishing off. Most of it will probably be done next week. We have the initial part finished, the first section of the story when the players arrive by boat on the river. And what we did with the last Kickstarter was right after funding, not long after that, we sent a PDF of that first section. So we'll probably do that again this time too. So people right away will have part of the story, and then it won't be very long. Making these smaller books, we have a lot more done by the time we get to Kickstarter. So it won't be that long
Nice.
until people have this PDF. I mean, there still has to be art done, but we said for the Kickstarter March, I believe, was our target, but I think that the PDF could probably be ready in January or February.
Cool.
Let me just check it, like double check. I'm pretty sure we put March as our target, but the PDF I think could be done earlier.
Well,
So
that's always a benefit because that's actually something that I really like about the stuff that you're doing is that you put in all the work really beforehand. Like most of it's already done.
Yeah.
And then you go to Kickstarter. And I think that sort of alleviates some of the concerns that people might have about Kickstarters with, well, I've already pledged. Is this actually going to get done? Will
Yeah.
I have to fight for like a refund? Which in your case, no, because I would say what, you're 50% done the book by the time Kickstarter happens?
No, now I'd say close to higher, more than that, 60, 70% by the time Kickstarter starts.
Nice.
And sometimes more than that. And yeah, I think I agree. It does help people feel more comfortable. They should also feel comfortable because we've funded 12 Kickstarters in a row before this one.
True, true.
So that should help. And then they can look at the body of work we've done. They can look online at reviews, most of which are positive. And yeah, I think it helps a lot to have more of it ready to go for sure.
Well, I've already pledged, and I certainly hope that you out there listening and or watching are going to pledge as well, because as I always say, funding small publishers is a really special thing to do, because that other company, when was the last time they wrote a new adventure? I mean, really, when you think about it, they're just rewriting stuff from like 25, 30 years ago. He says, with that in mind. But anyway, I know that we have a bit of limited time today, so we'll leave it there. And I certainly hope everyone goes to the link that'll be down below. Because, 3 days to go and so close. 5%, less than 5%.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We might
have 200 people on the sign up. Hurry up.
Well, yeah, we probably only need about a dozen people or so, depending on obviously how much they pledge to fund. And then, like you just said when I interrupted you, that there are the 2 warnings alerts for people that let them know that the Kickstarter is ending, and we have a lot of people following. So as we said before, hopefully many of those join on. We did have a really big run last time. It's actually almost exactly the same progress as the Kickstarter for the last adventure. I just checked, and it was funded with 3 days to go, and 3 days to go is going to be 6:00 tonight. So,
Very
it's
cool.
almost exactly in line. And then we ended up running over. We added another 50 to 100 people at least in the last 3 days, I think.
Oh, well, okay, then I'm not worried.
So yeah. Don't worry, Shane.
It's 3 days to go almost, and I just, I begin to worry. It's the end of the year,
I think one of your pugs, I heard, will up their pledge to cover any shortfall to make sure we fund.
That is true. Lily, Dory, where are you?
Yeah.
Yep. They're walking over here. Cash in paw. Look at that. Oh, they're so adorable. But thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for supporting small publishers, especially Cawood Publishing. And make sure that you check out theworldofmere.com, where all of this information is. And, of course, it'll all be down below, as I said. And, we'll see you guys next week. And I certainly hope that you are able to listen to past episodes. This is technically episode number 91. So there's going to be a huge party at number 100 because, we're awesome that way. But again, thank you, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Later.